Now I've been pricking my finger and using the My Sugar app for a few days and kind of getting a feel for how it should work. That's really made me understand the point of this application a lot more now. So it's time for another meeting with the client to try and lock down the simplest domain model we can use to fully construct and release this application. So I've got, basically I've been using the My Sugar app mostly, just having a play with that. I've been pricking the finger, adding the measurements, and like kind of seeing the graph go about. It kind of taught me two things really quickly. One, it's annoying as hell to keep pricking your finger. So that's, straight away, that's why there's like a desire to find a better way of taking your measurements, and that's definitely something we should do. Go to continuous monitors and try the best to make that, requirement a minimal, because it's already annoying just having to do it just once in one day kind of thing. Like you have to do it 3 times a day. That's enough. You've had enough already. So I can see the need definitely for improving that. And then as soon as I started seeing the graph, I kind of figured out then what the range should be, which I didn't know. It's you want it to be like 5 point something kind of thing, and you want to keep it there. I didn't have that knowledge, so now I kind of have the basic knowledge of where we're trying to be, and that you can go hyper or hyper on the graph. And just visually seeing that in this app's kind of helped to really see what it is we want to try and accomplish, which is to, in my eyes, get that information, get the readings as often as possible, and plot that in a graph or in a circle, and probably offer like 2 or 3 visuals. It kind of doesn't really matter, so long as we have multiple options, I think, so the user can visually see the data however they like to see it. Then it brought me back to really the first thing we want to do, like the principle that we want to get to for the first app, keeping it as simple as possible. So obviously for like HIPAA compliance and stuff, if we went in the cloud, then we've got to deal with that straight away. So I think for the first app, it just stores on the phone locally, and we don't have to deal with anything then, so it's nice and simple. I think we skip all the steps of startup, or potentially just have a few startup screens, like your type of diabetes, your range that you'd like to have, similar to that, the apps, how they set it up, but it's purely optional. I think we'll default it and either just skip that and go straight into the app, or we show them that and there's just a next button if they're happy with the basic settings. And I think that's really all we need, that the range and the type of diabetes. We don't even need the name or anything else for now. The age might help potentially in the calculating, the predictions that we're going to do. But basically, there's going to be like a setup screen, I think, when you first install it, like some really basic info. And then I go straight to the visual screen. So I've got your video up on screen with the start. So you've got obviously the 2 dials and the single dial. And we've got like the 5 menu items. So for the first release, I think we put all that in there. We put the kind of the menu in, but we grey out the exercise, carbs, and possibly the insulin. What's the insulin one do again? I haven't played the video again since then. Is that when you say, oh yeah, that's when you've said you've injected a certain amount of insulin, you log that fact in there. So I think we'll start with glucose and insulin as the 2 things that actually work. But I think put the full menu in so it's ready. Then I'll just play through this video, see where we get to.
Okay, so now I'm just writing down what you've been talking about, and then maybe later on I'll just tell something.
Let me just flick through this. So we've got obviously the UI. I think we'll have 2 options, I think, because most people seem to be familiar with just a graph, and you can see the graph, and you can also show predictions easier on a graph. You can show like a dotted line and where you're expecting it to flow. I think we'll have UI that can be toggled between this circular interface as well as a graph and potentially a list. So you've got like 3 interfaces. We can implement all them in the same way. Once it comes to doing the circle one, though, it'll be like, how do we want to show predictions, I guess, on that graph? So we can come to that as a separate discussion. That's not a major thing. Let me just flick through a bit more. So then we've got all the detail stuff, which I'm not sure whether... Oh yeah, adding insulin. So when you insulin's only going to be required for type 1 diabetics, I believe. So for type 2s, what would we want to recommend on the prediction, I guess, is the obvious question, as opposed to having, insulin for type 1s to bring it down, I believe it is.
But prediction, prediction is only prediction. Yeah. So if you predict the sugar level be like 5.5 in 2 hours, that's only prediction.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you had it yesterday and it's all the same situation today, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be the same eating. It depends on stress levels. It depends on carbs that you eat, whether it was fat food. If it was fat, then it takes a little bit longer to digest and to absorb the insulin and all these things. So there are many, many things that can happen, differently than previous. So
I think we can work on the prediction algorithm, though. I think that will be the thing that sets this app apart. In my eyes, if you had one thing in this app that was going to make it unique, we've obviously got the visuals, but I think the core thing, the more we think about it, is trying to make accurate predictions. And there's obviously a lot of factors, but I think that's something we should focus on quite a lot, to accurately predict things. To say that in 2 hours we expect you to need this, whatever it is. So I think we can do that. But in terms of type 1 and type 2 diabetics, obviously when type 1 they need to inject insulin, what do we need to recommend for type 2 diabetics? Is it simply to, eat, basically? Is it to get a certain food? Or what do we want to recommend for type 2 diabetics when we're trying to keep their sugars correct?
So for type 2, it's there are several ways to treat type 2. You can actually do it only with diet, because the pancreas still produces maybe insulin, maybe half as much, but it's still working. So you can actually just regulate your diet, and that's it. Exercise a little bit more, eat less carbs, and that's it, and you're fine, and lose weight.
Yeah.
Because usually type 2 diabetics, they are overweight, like big time, and that's another level of complexity. So for type 2 diabetics, they can either just stay without pills, without insulin, or they can take pills, or they can take insulin, or they can take insulin and pills. So there are many things they can do, but it's basically the same as type 1 and type 2. I don't even think that at this stage it's needed that you have to choose like type 1 or type 2. I think it's not even needed. Maybe later on.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty much the same. And age, in the beginning, it's... I'm not sure if that's important at this stage. Later on, yeah, as it grows kind of more in complexity, yeah. But at this stage, I don't know. Maybe it's too soon. So basically, type 2. I would say instead of writing like number, for example, insulin, if it's 30 or 8 or whatever, they can write something that represents pills or insulin. It's not something separate needed for type 2. It's just a little bit different, but not essentially different.
Yeah. So if we just stick with, I think we obviously the thing I skipped over, which we know we're going to do, is to obviously read the information from the actual devices, the glucose monitors. We need a manual entry, and we need to read from Bluetooth ones. So that's kind of a given. So we'll have a settings menu somewhere in the app that we can figure out where we basically connect to them and then automatically gather that information, as well as the manual entry option and the ability to then edit entries as well. So, if you wanted to tweak the entry, or you've edited it correctly, you've entered it incorrectly, you want to be able to edit it and delete those values. So we'll add that ability in there. I'm just wondering, do we just cut out I don't think we want to cut out the thing of having insulin, because that kind of adds a marker to, for one, it helps to predict anything. If we're not going to predict, then the app's mostly pointless at the start, because you're just going to see the values on a chart and it's not much help. So I think we need to do something to be able to, give the app a purpose at the very start. You know, you can log the insulin, you can show it in some visuals, but without doing anything with that information. I guess it could be useful because you're kind of showing the user that if they're within range, they can self-monitor and self-do whatever they do to regulate it. But I figured we'd maybe want some feedback at the very start, some kind of incentive to do something. And to do that, we need to kind of predict, or do you think we just simply say when the readings are entered and it is low, we prompt them to do something about it at that point and just leave the prediction out altogether at the start and keep it, literally log the information, show it, and start with that. Start really, really simple.
Don't. My idea is not to include predictions at this time, because if you're gonna exclude the exercise, then you cannot predict, because it's vital. And it should be like you predict certain amount glucose level or sugar level in the blood, and then, for example, you start exercising, and as the app gets information that you start jogging, then it has to kind of interact with insulins, and the prediction has to change. So because it's very complicated. If you're gonna predict without knowing if you are physically active or not, that's not gonna be accurate.
No.
So there are many more things to consider.
Yeah, so in that case then, if we're going to do... So what the app then needs is basically to gather the glucose levels from the readers and the manual entry, be able to edit and tweak those values and delete them, and then show them visually in the right color scheme, and probably just have push notifications to tell the user that, you know, the high or the low, or a good job when the level kind of thing. So that's really it at the start.
If, for example, we're going to make like the horizontal line, that such apps already exist. So why would people choose our app? There's no competitive edge whatsoever. So, for example, if you're going to make the horizontal and vertical line and then all this, it already exists. Lots of apps like that. So why?
I think as it grows, obviously, that's where you get these other benefits of things like the prediction and logging foods and automatically reading from devices. There'll be other benefits in the future. But initially, we can do this unique UI to give it that purpose, if you will, that, you know, uniqueness and the reason to pick it, I guess. So if we went with that, we would have basically then an intro screen which we can cut out and default everything, a settings button that basically then goes to a settings page to then change the way you measure the units, whether it's like 5 or whether it's 100 on your MMOLs and stuff like that. You could enter then at any point, you could then expand the settings menu to fulfill what we need. But by default, then you just open up the app, you'd instantly appear at the first screen with the circle visual. Then obviously there's going to be, at the very start, I think the first thing it wants to say is that we either need some kind of prompt or some kind of visual tutorial when it opens to kind of say, enter your first glucose reading now, kind of thing. You want to sort of point to the glucose icon maybe and say, you know, start by entering some glucose.
Or you can actually do it while, for example, first 5 screens when you install the app. Like, you know, one explains how the glucose is displayed. Then you press next, and then it shows how insulin is displayed. Then you press next. You know, it's just like 5 screens.
Yeah.
And then how carbs are displayed. So once you next, press next for 5 times, then you have already pretty much an idea what's going on.
Yeah, I think we do that then, like a little intro, and then also, you know, if there's no readings on the visual, you've entered nothing. You just got to think about the very initial opening, because a lot of people kind of forget that with an app. You don't start with the data in there, so when people first open an app, if there's no really obvious place to go, sometimes they just stare at the screen and don't know what to do with themselves. So it's kind of prompting them to go, maybe even in that intro screen, we kind of say, what's your current, you know, blood sugar? Please go and, you know, take it now and enter it. And then by the time they then get into it,
already show how it's displayed.
Yeah, we can show them their actual one, and then we could say, you know, is this what's your expected range? Is it normal? If so, it shows that. If not, edit. So we might do that kind of intro to it. Then when we're on the main screen, I think then if they click on the glucose button, it will go to a manual entry by default. And also somewhere on that screen, I think is there where we prompt to connect to all these Bluetooth devices. So it's not in a separate menu in settings, devices. It's actually in Glucose all the time. So you go to Glucose, and then if you've already connected one of these Bluetooth devices, it's got a little button to synchronize. So you just tap it and it pulls all the readings in. Otherwise, it's got maybe, you have no Bluetooth devices, add device, or, something like that. So probably think about in that Glucose page that you can enter values manually, how we want to display the ability to connect to a Bluetooth device in that screen and then show it once connected, because that will be one of the very first things we do. Like the very first, it will probably jump into that screen so we can start pulling them in and then visually showing them just in that menu. And then
kind of my idea is that maybe just start by everything manual. So the app has to be, because somebody will be entering data manually in the future. There will be always, I don't know how much, even more than half for sure, will be entering everything manually. So maybe just to do actually manual version in the beginning, and then start to kind of introducing all these Bluetooth devices and everything on top of that once the app functions manually. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've already got it. I've already got it reading the Bluetooth. I just haven't done the video on it yet, so we're already done with that. So that won't be an issue. So I'm now trying to figure out the specific UI, you see, so that the next step will be to actually start making the app do something very soon. So to do that, I really want like a clear, defined, exact UI layout, like you've done in the video, but now cut back to where we really are going to make the first version. So there's no sort of unknown. So we want to show this new 5-page kind of intro. We want to show the menu with everything grayed out bar Glucose, and then we want to show when you're in the Glucose, entering it manually plus Bluetooth devices. So even if it's just as simple as just a bar at the top that kind of shows this device is connected, and we just tell the user for now, they just connect to the Bluetooth in Android like normal, like you connect a set of headphones. They just go and connect, and if our app happens to understand that device, it naturally just appears. So we cut out the requirement to do the auto connect in the app. We can just rely on the user manually connecting to the device first. We could cut that step, but if we do that, we still need the visual. We still need the UI in that menu of basically the name of the device and a little circle synchronize button that they tap, and put that somewhere in that page. And then the very first page visually, if there's no data, what you want it to look like. Sounds obvious, but again, get some UI of the very first opening of the app with nothing in. What are we going to show them?
It's going to be dials. I don't know if it's on the first, on the first page, if it's only one dial, like one clock, or only two. I'm not sure. Maybe one, and all these buttons at the back. So when you open it, it's going to be like time and arrow. So this is kind of initially when the first screen is going to be arrow. So it still shows the time, and there will be digital clock. So it's kind of, there's a little bit of information, and then maybe date, and, so it's not like blank screen. There's still a little bit there. By that time, they have already passed through intro 5 screen. So they have pretty much like rough idea what's going on. So, because in my view, like the graph, of course, should be there. But all these visual graph is just, it doesn't exist. And physical exercise level has to be there. It's very, very important. But you have to start somewhere, I understand. You have to start from basic things.
Yeah. So in that case, then I think all I need to then define this in code to make a really solid kind of model of what we're going to do is, like I say, just get the actual UI in steps, just get screenshots of, each page of that intro, then the home page with the buttons grayed out, then the page of entering the Glucose, and then I will form a model from that. So we have like a really clear defined, this is what the app's going to do at the start. This is the very, it's only the starting point, but it allows us to make that in code, make it real. and then make the UI so we can, because I need to make the back-end code first, really, to get the thing functioning. And then when we come to the UI, it's just a case of plugging it all in and making it look nice so we can spend the time doing that. And then we can publish this as it is then at that point, get feedback, and then start adding all these extras after. But obviously, it's been kind of just at the minute, you've got an idea. I'm just getting started into understanding how things work in the diabetes side of things. And now I really need a concrete thing to work on to say, this is exactly what we want to do. So I can then try and get my head around the details of it, put it together and check. So I think if you get me those UIs, I'll finish off the Bluetooth videos and the Bluetooth code. And by the time you've done that, I've done that, you'll have the UI. Then I can model the whole concept, really solid, and then start working on producing all those bits nice and quickly then.
Yep.
So I think that's where we're at. And it won't
be.
So
what were your sugar levels? What was the highest? What was the lowest?
On mine?
Yeah.
I think I got one anomaly reading that was that 4.1 thing in the video, which I think was, I'm not sure what happened there, but that wasn't it. And then I think after food, my sugar only went to 5.9, I think. I don't know if that's good or bad, but never really fluctuated. So, but the funny thing is I drink coffee all day long. There's honey in the coffee or cinnamon in the coffee. I have probably 15 coffees a day. I'm overweight. That I've, with the work and the stress over 5-6 years, I've put like 3 or 4 stone on. But yet my blood sugar seemed to be good. I had a sense that I might be diabetic with having been overweight, but obviously I'm not. But the other thing I wanted eventually doing this app is to have the ability to not only use it for diabetics, but use it for people in general as health that can get used to their pattern and then predict anomalies that are like, oh, hang on, your insulin's no longer, you've seen a 10% drop in function, and start predicting before the condition arrives, kind of doing a very proactive app, which is where then calling it Blueberry instead of something specific to diabetes will help, because this app could then become a generalized health app that's also good at predicting and preventing the diseases in the first place and the kind of issues. So that's where I see it further down the line now. The more I'm getting involved, like I say, the more I start to realize the benefits of it. Like I say, it only took that one video of just pricking my finger a few times to go, this is just annoying. You need a solution to this. Just that simple step that you could tell somebody, oh, I have to prick my finger 3 times a day. And you'd be like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. It's 30 seconds out your day. But you do that, and it's just, I don't know, it's just annoying. It's not that painful at the side, but
it's not 3 times. I pricked my finger 7 times.
Yeah, so that's like the minimum, So it's just, like I say, you live in the world of the person that you're doing the app for, and you instantly start realizing why it's important. You can't sit back and just listen. You have to really do. And that, like I said, that got me excited as soon as I started doing it, to be like, right, what do we need to do now? I need to get this figured out in my head exactly so I can get going with this, because now I see instantly a need for it. And I'll be using it even though I don't have diabetes, because then I can see and try and do what I'm saying, try and predict changes and add exercise, and if nothing else, see if I can help lose weight using it, and also see what my blood sugars are like and see if that correlates to, weight gain and weight loss, and start figuring out patterns, add this kind of AI to the whole process. And I think that will be very powerful. I know it's not the initial idea, but I think that is something that nobody's done yet accurately. And it's a nice challenge, which I love challenges. And if we crack that, you can imagine predicting things, and all of a sudden one day we're actually predicting insulin perfectly. And what will that do for us? That'll open the doors for a whole new world of ideas, and where the software could be very useful then.
There will be plenty of challenges in this project. If you like challenges, I think this is the right project.
Yeah.
But then one thing is kind of, I'm always kind of setting my weight. So there's 2 dials. In between, there's the numbers, text that says digital clock, and then if it's today or whenever. And then at the end, there's like your weight. I measure weight in kilograms, and so it's very easy to gain weight as you're diabetic. If you inject a little bit more insulin, and if you eat a little bit more carbs, a little bit less exercise, you gain weight very quickly. Like, kilo per day. It can be. And, just now I relaxed for a few days and just didn't exercise that much. And I've gained a few kilos, and then you can already see that the insulin is not working that efficiently.
Mm.
You check the glucose, and it's like it's in red. It's like 15 millimoles, whereas before it was like 9 after meal, like 8.5 within range, and now it's 15. How come? Because you gain some weight, and when you gain some weight, you need more insulin to kind of to deal with it, to deal with carbs. So kind of somewhere to write your weight is really essential as well.
Yeah, I think it'll grow, like we said, it'll grow to all those areas to monitor. Like you say, you need to monitor everything in the health area, don't you? The weight, the food, the carbs, the exercise, the glucose. It all forms that picture. So no, I think it'll be good. I think if you can get me that UI done, I'll do the Bluetooth code, finish that off. So by the time we're done there, the plan will be to then structure this in code. Then the idea, each of those 5 intro pages then will have a piece of code related to that page ready to go.
Yep.
And then I can start making the UI and the apps to then bind to that code. And then we can start seeing, I can start literally pushing an Android app out there for you to start playing with and messing with. It's not, it's not that much work. It's just obviously with everything going on, I've only been able to dedicate, probably 10 hours to this project so far. As much as I want to be on it full time, life just is hectic at the minute, so I'm just dying to be able to sit down for an 8-hour stretch and just get it coding and get it done fast. And I'm getting there. I am getting to the point where I can spend more time. But if I could do this full time, which is my intention, we could eat through this really quickly. But having that clear direction now will help things go faster, because I haven't known the direction yet. I've kind of, I've listened and I've tried to learn certain things, and I've understood a bit, but now we can get this real clear picture. I can just sit down and attack it and know what every step is to the end point, which will help me work faster. So I think this is the point now where we should be able to speed up quite fast.
Yeah. And once kind of like real users, so diabetics, once they start using it, you'll get some feedback. It's going to be even more fun.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit more funding will come, and it will kind of accelerate the whole thing.
Yeah, definitely. So, I'll carry on finishing this Bluetooth code. Then you get me that UI, and then I think you'll then see a video come up. I'll do the idea of the structure at that point. Do it in code, and then we'll probably just have another meeting to make sure I've understood it right and you actually understand the code as well. Because I'll write it in such a way that you can actually understand where the code links in with the actual, the knowledge, if you will. And then I think we'll start making the Android app. I think we'll test it on Windows, but I don't think I'm going to bother making the UI on Windows to start with. Or if I do, it's just going to be basic, because the Windows is mainly to debug the code, whereas the UI is obviously on the Android side. It's more mobile phones. It's the Windows side it'd be nice to have, but I think we want to dedicate the time on the Android to make the Android app first, in a sense. But use the Windows to be able to, debug the code more than literally making this perfect UI on Windows that's kind of wasted at the start, because 90% of people are going to use the phone first. So that's what we'll do.
Yep. Perfect.
So, yeah, sounds good.
Great.
Yeah, and then I've got the guy that makes all my logos as well. He's hopefully going to make us a nice logo for this as well. So I'll prompt him to see if he can get one done in the next, say, week or two, so that it kind of ties in with the app, so we can then start getting some, a nice logo in there, which will all help. It's, like you say, it's amazing how much just nice UI makes people want to do things. So we'll keep that as a focus.
Yep. Brilliant.
So
brilliant.
Cool. Right. I'll get back to some coding. So
absolutely. Yeah. It's just like really, really. For me, it's a very weird feeling. I'm just doing nothing, and I watch your videos, and I'm kind of, I'm kind of, feeling part of the whole thing, and yet I'm not doing anything. It's a good feeling. Lazy feeling, but good feeling.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be all about, I think, everybody being involved in the kind of, like I say, I want to get to some meetings maybe and talk to people and just live that kind of life. And it's going to be, it's not, I know I'm doing code, but it's not going to be made by me as such. It's effectively made by the collective knowledge of everybody coming together, and I think that will make the app what it is. That everybody's going to have feedback, and listening to people and integrating that in the best way is what's going to make this, you know, a really good project. So,
Yep.
yeah,
we can see from reviews, you know, people like really liking it.
Yeah, cool, Ryan. Thanks for the meeting, and we'll have many more.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I will actually do the first initial ideas for you know, just to skip not to skip in the beginning to enter all these intros, whatever they call.
Yeah. You imagine you do the UI in the sense that how you want to see me literally deliver the app at the very first stage. So exactly as you want to see, and I can make it look exactly that way as well. So that will help give us clarity. You send me UI that looks this way, and I will make the app be exactly that way. So, you know, you can think of that as well. I know what I want now, so produce the UI to be that, and then I will make the code fit those UIs perfectly. So yeah, we'll refine that, and we'll get the UI perfect, and then we've got something rock solid to go on.
Yep.
So
brilliant.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Luke.
Thanks.
Talk to you next time.
Yeah. See you.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.
Bye. So you can see from that chat now, I have a fairly clear idea of where I want to go with this application. I want to get the UI from the client. I want to know exactly how it's going to look in the first release, the most basic version. And then I want to code a domain model. So a bunch of classes that, you know, represent what the model needs to be, which will then turn the domain model into what it needs to be, the core concept of the application. So we'll see that done soon. I'll finish off the Bluetooth receiving of data, and then we'll get straight into this domain model work.